as we launch into the nonprofit show. So grateful to have Juan Kingsbury here, founder and talent strategist with Career Blind Spot. And he's going to tell us a little bit more about that, in particular when it comes to performance harmony and why good teams might get out of tune. So stay with us. We want to start every episode, and we do start every episode by saying thank you, thank you, thank you to our presenting sponsors. Each and every one of these companies are here for your greater good. So lean into them because they have poured into you. They are in your corner and they exist across the globe to help you do more good. Thanks to Julia Patrick, who is not here today because she has another commitment with another presentation. But Julia Patrick, CEO of the American Nonprofit Academy. I'm your nonprofit nerd, Jarrett Ransom, and really excited again to have Juan with us. First of all, welcome from the bottom of my heart. So excited. So welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being here. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Career Blind Spot, and what we can expect for today's conversation.
Yeah, the micro version, if anyone's ever taken a personality assessment, and I use that term loosely, that's where I got my background using the DISC assessment and many others, emotional intelligence. And then about 9 years ago, I set out on my own. If I do another one of these, I'll maybe tell more of the raw story, but angrily, because I was like, hey, it's one thing to use these, but another thing to apply them regularly. And a lot of it's one and done. It's a nice to have. But also I didn't know what I was doing in terms of business. So I was a subject matter expert in these tools, but I angrily left and started my own business. Now I still have good relationship with the past job because I sell their product. But what I started to find was, it's one thing to get results, and a lot of jerks and mean people, bad bosses, sometimes don't get the credit where they still get results. They move the widget, abusing people or whatever, but I was like, it still counts. It's another thing to care about people. To do both is really hard. And that's why I was really excited. And when you reached out, because I was like, I think nonprofits, we tend to focus on the caring. But one of the reasons I liked you from our coffee conversation when we first met was, well, results still, insert whatever expletive you like, really matter, And so to do both, I was like, I want to work with more leaders like that. And now, there's a mixed bag there. But that's what Career Blind Spot, sometimes people think it's career coaching, which I can do some, I have. But really, it's more about a leader who, you have a blind spot if you're hiring this person, and the job's going to change. Even if you had the best job ever, even if your nonprofit was fantastic last year, some things may have changed since then. And so, just like in our car, we have these mirrors. It's not a one and done. Hey, I checked my passenger and I'm done. It's an ongoing thing. So that's what Career Blind Spot's about. I use those same tools: team building, leadership development, coaching, development. And that's the gist of it.
Yeah, I love it. So here's Juan's website, careerblindspot.com. I'm very active on LinkedIn as well. So let's get into what is performance harmony. So I've never actually heard these two words, performance harmony, put together. So I'm curious to learn myself.
That's good. I think that I talked with a branding friend and we kind of made it up, but I also realized it's what I realize everyone wants. It's a little squishy, touchy-feely, but here's the other side of it. It's, if you've been a leader or you've worked somewhere or you've been a consumer and a customer and you've been disappointed and you've ever verbally out loud uttered the words or in your head, why can't they just do their damn job? That
Guilty.
Performance harmony is what you really want. You want, I was just, Rodney King years ago said, can't we all just get along? Context stuff matters. But that's what happens when people are doing their role, what you expect of them, there's a level of trust, but we don't have to be friends, but the performance, move the needle, etc., needs to happen. And usually things are out of whack. Not terrible, but I don't know how old our audience is, but we have a record player and I play with it sometimes because you can make.
What is that?
Yeah, exactly. We're young and hip, but you can sometimes hear a song's off because the record's spinning too fast, but it could be slightly off. And so harmony is hitting that flow state from a team, which I think is a lofty goal. But anyway, performance harmony is what I realized. It's what every leader, altruistic, Brene Brown, vulnerable person really is striving for. But really, what every bad boss also wants too. Why can't they just do their damn job? And what I realized is that's the goal. That's the real summit that we're trying to hit. But what it takes to get there, not too complicated, but easier said than done. So that's the, if we're playing Candyland, that's the major milestone that I'm trying to get any leader to realize this is what you really want, but here's what it's going to take.
Juan, I think you're a badass. I mean, that's that's what you said after you first met me, and I think maybe that's why we really got along. And so, talk to us here. As we talk about role objectivity, what does that mean?
Yeah, and I just had this. I broke down this on my own podcast, careerblindspot.com, or Career Blind Spot Podcast, but you can check that out on the website. And I also, in the context of pharmacy, just spoke for AZPA a couple months ago. So I'm going to put a little spin of nonprofit. Now, I'm not the nonprofit expert, hence my...
No, but you could be a nerd too. You just need that little...
I should. I am getting new glasses. I might have to use these.
I'll send you a pair.
But regardless, if it's a nonprofit, a for-profit, a sports team, a bunch of Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, whatever it is, any group is trying to accomplish something that usually requires people, that usually requires a certain amount of resources and or money. So we're all really trying to do the same thing. Role objectivity is kind of step number one. We don't hire people to tap their full potential or make them happy in the workplace anyway. We hire them because we need a job to be done. There's an objective of the role.
Okay, yeah, that's where I wanted to break it down. So it literally means, what is the objective of your role? So is that in the job description? Like where would you find that?
Yeah, it is, and usually, and I don't want to get too harsh here, but if you like the badass, I'll keep going with it. You can tell me down, boy. But usually it becomes a needle in the haystack of a job description. And even leaders and the most dedicated people, sometimes they're the worst at missing the point of, actually, I'm hiring this executive assistant or this business development. I need this main thing to happen. There's all this stuff that goes there, but I need to cure cancer. Getting a degree, all these things matter. But if we don't make a dent in this universe or the metric, the widget move, we have a problem. And so that's where most, not just people, but the people in charge, the leaders, we're unclear. What is the most important thing? Think about like a babysitter. We might want our babysitter to have our kids in bed by 9 or teach them Chinese, I don't know, something. But most parents are like, just don't let them die. Or something.
Keep them alive. That is your role objectivity.
But if you alive. Exactly. But if you're like a teacher, or I'm sorry, you're hiring a tutor, that objective, keep them alive, but it's also like they got to pass math or whatever it is. So role objectivity is everyone probably, when things are out of tune, everyone has a different finish line. It's kind of like, hey, you and I want to go on vacation to the beach. Well, you want to go to San Diego. I want to go to Los Angeles. Pretty close, right? Maybe not if we're really trying to go together and land the plane or launch. So role objectivity is the most pragmatic, and it's really simple. Notice it's not objectivities. It's one thing. And I'm not saying there's other things that aren't involved, but if you're not clear on that one thing, then the rest of the job description can become this busy, complicated, convoluted mess. And the other part, going back to 2020, things change that one thing sometimes. Or maybe it's the same finish line, but now we have a detour. So if you want your team in harmony, or if they're out of harmony and they're not doing their jam jobs, that's where I always start is, what's the point of their job? And very often, the person doing their job has a very different depth. I'm going to LA, but my boss wants me to go to San Diego. Close enough, right?
Yeah. So I have a question, especially when it comes to nonprofits, because we exist for a mission, right? So is our mission that role objectivity? Like, let's say that it is to, eradicate hunger. Isn't that everyone's role objectivity, or am I off?
That's a great question, and this is I would gladly for people to tell me no, but for since it's my topic, it is important that the nonprofit is clear on like, how are we trying to do that? Eradicate hunger. That's a big, hairy, audacious goal, and I get the reach should exceed the grass. But if you're not clear on, are we trying to go to LA or are we trying to get to the moon?
Okay.
Well, then it's this big, vague thing of, world peace. Okay, that doesn't sound terrible, but, and here's the reality. Do you have volunteers or do you have people who actually you're paying money? If I'm paying money to someone, I want them to get the one thing done. And right now, a little off center, but keep me interesting. I just came from a naturopath, which is different than covered insurance. Like that stuff better work, or at least I better be full. So yes, the organization should be clear on that objective because that's everyone coming along. But every time you hire especially if you're paying them money, but even a volunteer, you gotta know, like, it's like what think of a band, are they playing the triangle? They train the tuba. They need to know the specific thing. And if you're unclear, if you're just expecting them for their goodwill,
right,
that's going to burn out.
It's not going to work. Yeah. I love your passion. It's definitely coming through. So move us into individual empathy. I'm curious what this means for you here.
Yeah. And actually, I'll go back because they're all together. But I always use the example, even though I like to do my own yard work. Imagine if I or you have ever hired someone to mow your lawn, but they're like, well, but I really love painting. Cool. But I only want my grass mowed. That's role objectivity. You have to be clear on the person that you're expecting to do an awesome job. What is that? What's the A+? What's the C- or the passing grade? Individual empathy is like, oh, I got someone who's like a natural artist and they're awesome. And the reason they're mowing lawns is they're just trying to pay for art school or trying to fund their materials. Empathy, that's another term that I think we all have, or that we all are capable of, but most of us really, I don't want to say suck at doing it, but we underestimate at how daunting it is to be empathetic. Little silly here, but anytime someone cuts me off, I live in downtown Phoenix, it's easy to get mad. But I just tell myself, well, they have diarrhea. I'm just making up in my head, but I'm like, it doesn't make sense to be angry at everyone. But individual empathy, going back to the workplace, nonprofit, is not treating everyone the same. Yeah. Unless it's that you're actually trying to think that they're different people, that they individually, you're taking time. Really, it's a redundant phrase. Empathy is unique, custom. But it's really like you have this team, and maybe all of your team are doing great, except you got one squeaky wheel. You got one toxic, maybe one burnt out person. Yeah. Well, are you making excuses and pointing your finger? Or are you actually thinking, hey, it's a single mom, or this is a dad who blah, 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 or this is a single person who, is not where they thought they'd be in later in life. It's not your job to play therapist, but if it's their job to make all the sales calls and they're not doing it, it's to really think, well, who do I have here? Are they even cut out for it? Do they want to do this? Can I actually coach them? Is it salvageable? But it's stopping and thinking, like the role objectivity is the most cold objective thing. Individual empathy is the most subjective thing.
It's subjective, right? And I guess for that, I would fall into, are we being empathetic? Are we enabling the victim mentality?
Yes. And here's the thing. It's not being nice. Mm-hmm. Individual empathy isn't being nice and polite. And in fact, if you have someone that I say, hey, anytime this happens in the workplace, hey, how is so-and-so? Oh, they're nice. That immediately is, oh, so-and-so doesn't carry their weight. As opposed to, oh, they're a jerk. And I'm like, oh, they probably still do something, but maybe they're rough around the edges. They're nice. It's kind of like saying, hey, I love you like a brother or a sister. You don't really want to hear that. But again, if you're the conductor, you're the person in charge, you want your team to do their job, you got to look like, why isn't this person, or is it, what is it going to take for them to do a good job? Why did they come? Everyone comes for a paycheck. Everyone goes to work for money. Happy people go to work for a different thing. It's not, my belief, your boss's job to make you happy. But if you're a smart boss, you at least try to make them less miserable, but they need to do the job first. And so it's a chicken and the egg sort of thing.
And is that where pure respect comes into? Because I'm feeling like all of this really like kind of flows together.
Yes, it's really it's a Russian nesting dolls. You know what those are?
Yes, you take one off and another one's in there and you just
it's like the same thing. And
Yeah.
so my industry, team development, coaching, EQ is based off of a lack of peer respect. And most people won't admit, I don't respect Jared or Juan, but it is usually not, I don't have an issue personally with her. It's the job that you do, or I think you should be doing. And so this is the reverse order. Most people are complaining about, most leaders are like, they just won't get along, or they don't, blah, blah, blah. And so what I realized is, oh, the problem is that smaller nesting doll all the time, that someone either doesn't understand or isn't clear on their job, or someone else's job. Because let's say, Jarrett, you're a badass with your job. You do your role, but me and you aren't getting along.
Okay.
And basically it comes down to that I'm not doing my role really well. And no one's taking the time to say, hey, Juan, you're nice, but blah, blah, blah. Peer respect, and might be harsher words, but basically you have a lack of respect for me, or I have a lack of respect for, like, wow, you're really carrying your weight. You're awesome. I'm not carrying my weight. And so I go back to sports. I don't like to make too many sports analogies, but they don't have to be friends. They do
Oh my gosh. Yes.
trust each other. And so peer respect is it's about almost peer/role respect. And a lot of us don't trust our peers. I should say, when it's uncomfortable, when it's out of harmony, we don't trust each other. And sometimes we're wrong. Maybe you think my job should be up here, but really, I like going back to pharmacists. Pharmacists make good money. Pharmacy techs make different money. And that's not wrong, but it's like, hey, realize they see you up here, they're here. Like, are you guys trusting of those roles, or is there some tension?
Sure. Wow. So I'm curious, what sports did you play?
I grew up playing baseball because my mom loved it, and rebelling, I ended up becoming an umpire to make some side money during college. It was just so boring for me. I could play, but I just didn't love it. But basketball I loved. And that was my main one, was basketball.
Yeah. Well, I love the sports analogy. And my co-host, of course, Julia Patrick, she also loves sports and often brings in sports analogies. But I love what you said and how you related it to sports, because as a soccer player, I grew up as a soccer player. And also I've coached, right? And so it's really about, we don't have to get along on the team, like we don't have to get along on the team, but our end goal is this. So we need to work together for this end goal. And I see that often. And I'm curious, Juan, if you could talk to us about how, maybe even with the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, how have you seen the shift with all of your topics that you've talked about today? What have you seen really in the workforce?
That the people who are considered bad bosses or this or like not the admirable leaders, but their employees are still being paid, are severely undercredited with being clear on role objectivity. That, hey, we have a job to do and we can still pay you or provide insurance or whatever, that they don't get the credit. However, but the people who really do the individual empathy and hold people accountable. Like, I love it, and this is unfortunate, but I love it when someone gets fired, or I should say let go, but in the most respectful, honest, and early way of, hey, we hired you because of this, and it doesn't seem like you can do it. And so we really want this to work, but here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna give you, 2 weeks notice or a month. That doesn't happen very often. But what that tells me is that's a leader who is focused on the business, but also treating someone like, it's holding people accountable. I keep starting to say this phrase, not to open a different topic, but like, fire if your medical provider isn't helping you out, like, you can go somewhere else. Now, finding that other person is daunting, but a lot of us just stick with someone because that's the expectation. So in 2020, what I've seen is those people who are doing that are reaping the rewards. Like, hey, business is down. Employees say, hey, I'm going to slash my paycheck, or I'm willing to. You can't force loyalty. And so if you really want the team that's going to have your back when the S hits the fan, that's happening more. But also the other people who at least are clear on objectivity, they're still employing people. So one is better than the other, But if you really want a team in harmony, I think I was going to say this earlier, but empathy is hard and exhausting. I understand why we don't do it all the time, especially if we're stressed out. If I'm in pain, why am I going to worry about your pain? So any leader who can get results and makes time to care about their people to get results, that's hard, and I'm willing to help them. So that's kind of a big answer here, but those are the like two classes of leaders that are still surviving, the old school and the new school.
Yeah. And I would say when it comes to empathy, and I'm curious, your perspective and view here is I would stereotypically say that the nonprofit community and the nonprofit leaders are also very empathetic individuals, right? We are the individuals that you name it, we're in. It's an all in kind of culture, or from my, existence and perspective. So how have you seen, if you can, share about how like empathy shows up in the different sectors of what you have experience in, and I would love to see if you've seen a difference between
and I would have to say, like, caring and doing are two different things. And so, it's one thing to say, hey, I want to help immigrants or homeless people, whatever. But to start a nonprofit that does that, all of a sudden you're in a different Venn diagram than most people.
Yes. Okay.
But even then, empathy, my definition of it, which most people do disagree, is not just, oh, I feel for you, oh, I want to help you, but it's like you almost could like jump back in time and realize, oh, they did have diarrhea on their way to work, but most of us don't do that. And so I think just because you're a nice person who cares about a cause doesn't mean that you're as empathetic as you could be. The example I'll give is just because you have an SUV that full tank can get you all the way to LA on one tank, doesn't mean you're driving it there. Doesn't mean you're going on adventures. And so to me, a truly empathetic person, and I don't count myself as this all the time, it's a muscle, gets results too. It's not just I care for this person. I also realize, oh, this person's hurting and they can't help me in the way that I need help right now. It's like when a parent, you have like a teenage son, right?
Almost 11.
Almost, okay. Well, maybe he's already there, but like I'm sure there's times when, like, I don't know, he falls and scrapes his knee and you want to go and, mom him or parent him, but versus also you know what, he needs to figure out how to bounce back up and dust himself off. To me, that's empathy. The one where you go and help. I'm not saying it's not, but to really know, like, look, if this person's going to become the person or the performer they want, to me, that in terms of the industry, I don't think, I don't know what I'm trying to say exactly. I feel like we've gotten pulled in two different directions. If you're for profit, it is now cooler and more hip to kind of care about your employees, but we still kind of put it on the surface. Doing it is a different thing. And the employee is almost worse if you say it, but then you don't back it up, versus just saying, like, we don't really care about you, but as long as you do a good job, here's your job. To me, I think that's a better mission statement than saying we care about you and not doing it. But I believe I can't say that I've seen one industry be better at it, but to me, it always starts at the top. There's nothing new there. And any leader who is also very aware of numbers and the reality of tangible things, and who's more empathetic, to me, I think is doing much better today. But again, that's a daunting task. Like we were talking about, like not drinking coffee or whatever, like that requires extra effort. So I can't narrow it to one area. Actually, I can. I'll say my brain just saved me. If you have a good team working from home, you're empathetic. And if you don't, it's not that it's not a good team, but like people say, oh, I can't trust people working from home, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, well, you've hired the wrong people then.
Right.
And so if you actually have a high performing team that's remote, there's empathy somewhere in that group, if not amongst all of your team. Because the other thing I don't think I quite touched on, those three things, role objectivity, individual empathy, peer respect, it's not just the leader doing it, it's all the people, that the guitarist knows that the drummer and blah, blah, blah. So yeah, working from home leaders, you have to have empathy. Otherwise it doesn't work.
Yeah. That is so fascinating. And I do still think you're a total badass and would still nerd out with you for hours. So maybe we shouldn't go for coffee, but like, I don't know, our favorite watering hole where literally maybe there is water and not coffee because we we've both talked about that. I am curious as we start to wrap up today's conversation for the episode one. You talked about, checking your passenger in the seat and that you don't just check this passenger or you don't just check your rearview mirror once. This is an ongoing thing. What does Career Blind Spot teach when it comes to doing this ongoing thing with our teammates?
It starts with yourself. Actually, I'll promote, and if you need to edit this out, but I have a book that's coming out called In a New Work Mindset. It's my first book. It's very short, like an hour-long plane ride. But it starts with culture is a choice, sort of, made by leaders. Those are paraphrase of the chapter. But like, if your leader doesn't have a good relationship with their job, with the objective of their role, you could still have some superstars, but it's going to influence. Just like if a parent has X, Y, and Z issue, the kids are going to deal with it. Now, there's no flawless thing, but you're setting an expectation of how to take care of yourself. And very often we get bosses, managers, good business people, leaders, not always. And so what Career Blind Spot teaches is that, like, look, if you want more loyalty, respect, or whatever out of these employees, here are the ingredients. But every time they look at you and you're mad because they're smoking in 90s commercial, where'd you learn how to smoke? I learned it from you, Dad. Like it's a bookend. Leadership is a bookend. The people who go in between, but you set the tone. And so that's what I'm teaching over and over. It's a personal accountability issue. And so people who say, hey, I can't hire, people don't want to stick around, I hire lazy people, or the people I keep hiring, I'm like, why are you attracting losers? And I'm being mean on purpose, but I'm making it about them. I was like, maybe these aren't the right people for you, but if you want the right people, well, then you need to do something different. So I always like to point the finger at the person who's pointing the finger. It's always your fault if you're trying to do something. But in an organization, what Career Blind Spot is trying to teach is that we all have blind spots. The boss probably always wasn't the boss, and therefore their job changes. And I'll end with this. When you're a parent, I'm not one, hope to be soon. But you have the baby, first baby, job description, mom or dad, ding. Now in 2 weeks, that job description just changed a little bit. Keep the baby alive, but all the things, 5 years old, 10, 13, 20, 30, you're always a parent, but the job description keeps changing. But it's on you of what kind of parent you want to be. And you can't force your kids to do this or that, but setting that example is way better than lecturing and hoping they change.
This has been phenomenal. And, all of your topics of conversation have really just been mind-blowing for me. And you will be an amazing parent. So as soon as that job title changes, I know that you are up for the job. Juan Kingsbury, founder and talent strategist with Career Blind Spot. This is exactly where you can find one, careerblindspot.com. Would love to know more about your book when that comes out. We actually have here on the American Nonprofit Academy a book list, and I would love for Julia and I to put your book. I heard you say it's not quite ready, but it's almost ready. Would love to add that to our book list. So I hope that you will keep us posted. And of course, thank you. And of course, thank you to all of our presenting sponsors. You see their logos right in front of the screen. Again, they exist for you to do more good. So they are here to pour into you, into your mission-driven goals. And I hope that if you haven't already, please do find them. They are here to lift the energy in our world and to help you solve your community problems. If you haven't checked out fundraisingevents.tv with Mr. Jason Champion, make sure you do that. That conversation and episode is everything from, I hope I can do Julia and Jason right. It's from barns to ballrooms and golf to gala. It's a little hard for me to say that, but I love how they always combine those, kind of spectrums. But Juan, wow, I am just wowed, and I really would love to meet you in person. You are a high vibing energy that I would love to just, kind of go back and forth with on this conversation. So again, so grateful that you have joined us today live for this broadcast. And of course, If there was anything Juan said that you want to go back to and revisit, of course, this will be fed into the fabric of the American Nonprofit Academy. Juan, thank you so much. I appreciate you.
You are welcome. Thank you. It's been a privilege and an honor. Thank you.
Absolutely. And to all of you that have joined us today, I hope that you'll join us again for tomorrow, which is, as I check my calendar, yes, it is a Friday. So it's Ask and Answered. Tony Bell will be joining me tomorrow. And until then, please stay well so you can do well. Thanks, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.